All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody. Thanks for coming on Thursday night to our January Startup Grind event. We have How to Not Suck at Networking with Networking Concierge Ashley Owens. Ashley, if you want to take a second or two and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. Tim and Dominic, thank you guys very much for having me. My name is Ashley Owens. I'm a networking concierge, which just is a fancy word for being networking coach. So my job is to teach my sales teams, not my sales teams, but sales teams, associations, individuals, and entrepreneurs how to network virtually effectively. I'm a big operations kind of person, so my training or my coaching really revolves around the fact that you already know how to network, but more on your processes and procedures. So think of it as a way of optimizing your network by putting and emphasizing good nurtured relationships into a way that you can do it to maximize your efficiency. So that's me. That's what I do. And I have 2 digital talk shows. I speak to, or I work with a company called RBN TV, and they're in Cherry Hill, and I interview power networkers all over the country and now all over the world because of the power of virtual. And then I also have a show called Ask Ashley Assist, which goes into more specific areas of networking with regards to templates and best practices and things like that. So my way of being able to educate my audience is through film and television. So hopefully that helps.
Nice. Yeah,
Thanks, man.
Dominic and I were actually lucky enough to be on your show at one point and got interviewed, and it was fun. So anybody out there that needs to be interviewed or would like to be interviewed, I recommend you reach out to Ashley and get on her show because it's awesome. It's a little, what is it, half hour? It's very
half hour. Goes by super fast.
Back, low key. Ashley's awesome. So but the reason for us bringing in Ashley was because she, not only is she awesome, and she'll tell you why she's awesome soon, but she really teaches not only just entrepreneurs, but business people in general how to network, how to not be terrible at it, and how to really maximize your potential and really, utilize your strengths in that type of, business practice.
Right.
A lot of entrepreneurs don't think that maybe, I have an idea, I don't need to network, but it could not be more wrong. And Ashley's here to kind of teach us and tell us why that is. So I know you're going to go in more depth about your background and things like that, but maybe give some, everybody here a little deeper dive than you really touch on in your presentation. So we can get to know you a little better, where you came from, and I'll take your phrase, what makes you awesome?
Oh, he's stealing stuff. Okay, so just want to make it very clear to everybody on this call, I had no business starting a business. And so by my own background and what I had to kind of go through was I had 18 jobs after graduation. I'm 33 years old. I graduated school in 2010, which is about 2 years after the first economic depression we've had. And I was going and I was finding positions as much as I could. I started my career working in New York. I worked for 2 celebrities as a personal assistant, which led to a lot of therapy bills and learning how to talk about boundaries. So the goal that I was trying to do was to achieve some kind of career in entertainment. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. So I came back to New Jersey after I had worked in New York, and I had worked as a waitress for about 3 years. I had positions in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. I worked for companies like eBay Enterprise. I worked for companies that gathered data for oil and gas. I used to sell custom software. I used to be a business development manager for an IT company. I used to work for another millionaire in Philadelphia. So everything is just, it was a lot of positions that I worked in, but I always had a job. And that was because I always had a network. But I had no idea what I was building was a network. So my background was very, very eclectic, which made it very difficult for me to get in the door because it looked like I had bounced around. 18 jobs after graduation, I never got fired. It was all mergers and acquisitions. And at some point in my career, I got pissed off enough to make a move. I had worked for companies that were, that were nonprofits, that were small business, that were big business, that were corporate, all over the map, but I'd never invested in myself. And so along that path, I had no idea, literally no idea where my skill sets lied, because all I did was keep my head down and I worked. Tim, you're Irish Catholic, right?
Irish Catholic? Irish, not Catholic, Lutheran, but.
Okay, Irish. You're Irish. We work until we stroke out, right? Yeah. We just keep our head down, work until we stroke out. So right, that's what we do. So, at that point in time, it was getting to the reason why I'm struggling talking about this is because it's so different for so many people, but then it's also very similar for so many people. So I was in New York, came back, worked in New Jersey as a waitress for 3 years before I moved to Philadelphia with my then husband. So I was working in a diner, a Jersey diner. And I realized that working in a Jersey diner was awesome. One, because free food, but two, it allowed me to work a muscle. And this muscle was being able to interpret and decipher and communicate with an influx of different personalities and being able to troubleshoot things very, very quickly. And after 3 years, I had built this muscle, being able to communicate with people not only effectively, but then cater to their personalities and provide value in some way for the ultimate goal, which was getting the tip. So at the end of the day, I thought that I had failed because when I was working as a waitress, I had just stopped working as a personal assistant. And I thought that I had missed every opportunity I wanted to work in business entertainment. Working as this waitress, I was at the lowest I could go, although it was fine working. I just didn't really enjoy the fact that I felt like I had taken a step down. So I went over to my booth, my table. I had 4 guys sit in the booth. And they were all very nice, very professional, very, very nice guys. And then we're kind of playing around and saying, hey, what would you suggest for us? And as you guys can tell, I do a bit sometimes. So what I was going into the conversation was like, oh, you're looking a little spicy. You might want the barbecue, and I'll bring some, just doing a bit. And it allowed me, one, to show my personality, and two, I really did enjoy talking to them. There was no other agenda except it was making the time go by fast. So at the end of the conversation, or the end of their meal, one of the gentlemen comes over to me and says, hey, would you send us your resume? It's like, thanks, guys, but show it in the tip, right? I had no idea that they saw value in what I was doing. And so I said, no, show it in the tip, guys. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Thinking that I would be a waitress for as long as I could until I found something different. The next day, that same guy comes back in. He's the owner of a company. And he goes, we never got your resume. This was 24 hours later. He's like, we never got your resume. It's like, okay, all right. So I sent him my resume, again, thinking nothing of it. A week later, I went in for an interview. Now they've only seen waitress Ashley, which is very, back and forth. And she's very, pointing finger kind of person. And, it's doing her bit. And they didn't see New York Ashley. New York Ashley was a very different kind of Ashley. That was a person who was able to communicate well, talk about your skill sets, come dressed in a fitted suit, and be able to, effectively do whatever they needed to do. Their company was an online e-commerce furniture company, and they were looking for a customer service and sales representative. Within 20 minutes of the interview, I had the job. I had a salary, I had benefits, I had a 401k, and I started within a week. And it was because of these guys, this gentleman that came up and saw value in myself for me being enough was the first time anybody has ever seen value and was able to give me an opportunity. So that was the first time out of all the positions that I had where somebody saw me at my lowest and saw value in what I was able to do. So from that position, I worked for them for about 1.5 years, and then I moved to Philadelphia. And that catapulted my resume to the next level because I had this position that was longer than 8 months. And from there, I have not met any other managers. They had set the bar so high as far as being able to give me a chance, an opportunity, and never concealed my voice. And at the time, my voice was very compliant. Still, it was up until I started my own business, but my voice was very compliant. I worked really hard to just follow the rules. And so I found it very difficult for me to be able to recognize a good manager later on because my job growing up was always just to keep your head down and keep working. So with that being said, when I started this business, Ashley Assists, I wanted something inside me that was like an itch that I couldn't scratch. And for years, I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was because I wasn't really giving value the way that I had been treated back when I was a waitress. So those guys saw value in me when I was at my worst, and I tried to make my business the foundation of what they did for me that day. So I'll take every single phone call. I will answer every single email. I'll answer every single connection request on LinkedIn, because if I could give them just a little bit of what they gave me to somebody else, I could change their life, just like they changed mine. So I make it a foundation of what I do, incorporating from the kindness and the humility that those guys gave me that day. So my story starts with someone giving me a chance, someone actually allowing me to speak my voice and be myself and show that I was enough, and turned into now me having a business that I've run on my own for the past 3 years without having any business background, but knowing myself well enough to be able to troubleshoot to get through the next step, which is building a business that I run on my own. So that's the background of that story.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story. And it really speaks volumes to, people nowadays who, especially not post-COVID, but during COVID, have lost jobs, but have a skill set that they can rely on to go do what they want to do, what they've always wanted to do, and use those skills that they've built over the years to kind of go and do their own thing, which, you kind of touched on it a little bit. So what happened in your career or your life that you got to the point where you're like, excuse me, but F it, I'm going on my own and I'm starting my own business, and here, let's go. I'm doing this.
I can tell you exactly what happened. So I ended up 3 years ago, I was working for a company that unfortunately the leader of that company did not see the value as much as I saw in myself. And at one point, after I had gotten married, he had sent me over an email saying, could you please send over a PowerPoint as to why you should stay here? And I'm like, okay. I brought in all of these potential deals, and it was his job to close them. And because he was too involved in the day-to-day, unfortunately, those never really lined up, and I didn't feel like I was really being set up for success. I knew that my time was, my spidey sense always goes when things aren't working out, because it's happened 18 times, right? So I get fired from that position, and it wasn't a performance thing, it was a culture thing. And so I felt like if I was going to, at the time, I'm now divorced, but at the time I was thinking, if I'm ever gonna have kids, I don't wanna be a hypocrite. I don't feel like I've actually started my life yet. And if I'm going to have children, I don't wanna, if I, God forbid, but if I have a daughter, what am I gonna tell her? That mom stopped? Because at the time, if I would have had children, for me, I would have incorporated my entire life into them, because that's just the kind of person I am. I didn't really seek to have kids, but there was more in me to find out who I was, and if I could actually have the opportunity to give value back. I felt like there was a hole I could not fill, and it's so stereotypical, but it was a hole I couldn't fill, and I couldn't describe what that hole was. Couldn't describe where it was coming from, but I knew something was missing, and it was punching me in the face because I buried it so well for 10 years. It was punching me in the face. So I said, if you cannot see the value, you are 2 years older than I am. You cannot see the value in what I'm putting together. I don't feel like this is a good fit. So I did the only thing I could have, and I quit, which is, everything tightens up. I had no second position, but I built up a network well enough to know that I could ask for the favor, which again, as Irish, you don't do that, but the opportunity presented itself. So I went to a networking event. So I don't know if you know who Todd Hessbacher is. He's the one that runs the networking at the Phillies game. So when we were all allowed outside, I went to this networking event, and I had just left my position. I had put my 2 weeks in and left on a Friday, went to this event on a Monday. And I went with just to go, because I thought it was important for me to go and just be myself and just to be around people and tell my network what was going on. And I walked around, and I just was telling people like, oh, I don't have a job. And they're like, oh, that's great. Congratulations on quitting. I'm like, it's not great. So I took a step back, and I looked at everybody at that event. And I'm a fixer, because when I used to be a personal assistant, like I'm a fixer. I was able to troubleshoot. That's a skill set I knew that I had, but I didn't know how to transfer that into something new. So I looked around, I'm like, what does everybody here have in common? I don't want to change my network again for the 11th time. I can't do that. That's just too much. How do I fix what I've already built? So I walked around, I looked at everybody, I'm like, what are they? They're all here because they're networking, or they're in sales, or they're here to, to be in a community. And I went around and I asked everybody, I'm like, what sucks for you about networking? What sucks? What do you hate about it? And every single person came up with a new idea, which then became an idea for a service offering. Oh, I hate the follow-up. Sleep, because that's a skill set. I hate going to events alone. I know how to work a room because I used to do improvisation and teach it in college and after I graduated. Oh, I hate finding events. I'm crazy good at being able to dive into specific events and picking up the phone and making phone calls to those coordinators to find out if it's a good fit for you. I'm so used to just picking up the phone and making the hard decisions, because as a personal assistant, you had to make all of the hard decisions and build those relationships. So I figured out a way to put my skill sets into services. So I walked around, this is the best part. So I walked around and I went to this guy at the end, and he said to me, like, hey, I overheard, what you're thinking about putting together. Would you ever go with somebody to a networking event that was a book signing? I said, yes. He goes, okay, give me a call in 2 weeks and we'll set something up. Okay. And in 2 weeks, I had a website, business cards, a logo, a map, a statement of work, branding colors. I had headshots done. In 2 weeks, I had a duct tape version of a business. And it was only then did I realize, oh my God, maybe I can do this. Because I didn't have to ask for anybody's permission. I didn't have to get it approved. I could call in the favors that I've been saving for 10 years and people putting all of their effort into helping me out. It was the first time I ever saw in my entire adult life what I was capable of when nobody else was at the helm. And it was completely eye-opening of how much that I got done. So much so that I reached out to the business owner about a day before. I said, hey, I would be happy to chat to you about this. Let me know if you still like me to come to this event. He goes, absolutely. I sent him over my invoice, which I think was on a Word doc. And I think it was $7 at the time. I think after all taxes, it came to like $7. But I drove to State College 4 hours to do a 2-hour event. So he was behind the table. He needed to network with specific kinds of people, not for sales-wise, but for strategic partnerships. And I walked around and I talked to people. And then I came back and gave him a list of all the people that I think he should talk to. And then his team set up those introductions. So I drove 4 hours to do a 2-hour event, and I drove back, no questions asked. The next day, not only did I get paid on time, but I got a beautiful testimonial from him that went on my website, and the doors opened up. In the past 3 years, I've been on NBC. I've done 100 speaking engagements. I have made more money on my own this past year than I had in the first 2 years, but I've built a business off of tripling down on my skill sets and not allowing anybody else to stand in my way. I'm also louder now, I'm more confident now, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to curse in here, but I don't take as much shit as I used to, because it's mine. And that feeling of being able to have a business that is yours, that you can create, that you can craft, that you can mess up on. The ownership is a freedom that I never knew existed. And it wasn't until I got pissed off enough to make a decision that it allowed me to put something together that actually I didn't have to feel like I was trying to overcompensate for the skill set I didn't learn just because I needed the job. I took all my skill sets and I tripled down on them. And now I'm finally using my video degree. I'm finally using the fact that I'm SAG eligible. I used to be an actor a long time ago. Not great at it, but I put that together in a way that it is beneficial to giving my clients the best kind of service. So because of my background and because of what I went through and because of the crap and the proverbial being punched in the face, I wouldn't change any of that. Because at the time that I started the business was the only time to do it. So it's a roundabout way of saying that was the moment of being able to do it.
That was awesome. I feel like when I originally called you to talk and ask you to do this, I was like, is it a fireside chat? Is it a workshop? And I kind of ended on, it's going to be both, because I need your story out there for everybody, because it's awesome. And the passion that you have behind it is fantastic. So thank you for doing that. But going into that, so now let's see what you do for your presentation, because I'd love to see it, and I'm sure everybody is really stoked after that introduction to hear what you have to say.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's a lot. I'm sorry. Thank you. So I'll share my screen here.
Yeah, let's see if it works.
Yeah, we should have tested this before we did things.
We were just chatting. We didn't test anything, which is not great, but
I know. If you guys have questions about like the celebrities that I worked with, I know I signed something somewhere, but if you ask, I can't say no. I can tell you. Just saying. Let me eat. Let's do that. No, just kidding. Let's do this. Because when you have two screens, it becomes a little cranky. Meh, meh, meh. Joshua, you are flattering me with your compliments. Keep them coming.
Joshua is our amazing co-director, by the way. So,
Joshua.
Yes.
Can you guys see this?
I can see it. I don't know if anybody else can, but
can you guys drop it in the shenanigans there?
We can.
I can't see the chat. Yeah, you guys can. Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, cool. How much time do I have? Because I can't see anything except my screens.
So I'm thinking, like, 30 minutes. That gives us about 10 to do some Q&A at the end.
Perfect. If you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. I'll see them after the presentation. This is just my dumb face with just some fun facts, but we went through the cool stuff. So I did once eat a Carolina Reaper. It's a bad life choice for everybody. So just don't do those things, but that's a fun fact about me. All right, folks. So today we're going to talk about, and what I really want to go into is that I feel like with networking, it feels to me, or at least it used to feel like, you had to go into a conversation and sell yourself, right? Everyone talks about building relationships, blah, blah, blah. We all know how to do that, right? We do that with our friends. We do that with our families. We do that with the crazy aunt and uncle that, has very difficult political views. We figure it out. We make it work. It's the same with professional relationships and professional friendships. You are building a friendship with somebody else, and they just happen to know more about your business and want to help and have the connections to help you. So here's the big problem with people is that right now what the norm is, unfortunately, is that most professionals are operating virtually. You're not necessarily getting the one-on-one interaction, but there are ways that you can really nurture relationships digitally, and we're going to go through that. So as I told you before, I'm very tactical, so we're going to get into those tactical and tangible tips in just a moment. Then you've got the people who still, after a full year of being virtual, have no idea how to scroll down in an email to find the Zoom link, or just don't look at the passcode, because apparently that's now a thing that people are doing. They're just completely ignoring just the instructions. And then you've got, people that have got their nose up in their it's a whole thing. There needs to be best practices here. And if anybody that knows how to do that, just let me know. Connecting with new people, is it safe? Is it still weird? Are we still having those conversations that are very vulnerable? And then apparently pants are still optional. I don't understand why people just they forget to put on pants, and then they're in the news, and then it's a whole thing, and we're gonna keep moving forward. All right, so here's the reality. When you guys are building up a network, think of it as not necessarily just a friend group or a professional group of people that you like, and you trust, but think of it as an army. What you're building is a group of people that will become your champions. So what that means is you're building an army of people that will advocate for you when you're not in the room. That's what you're really building. You're building people who will fight for you when you're not in the room. But in order to lead that army, you have to fight for them way more than they fight for you. You have to give way more than they give to you in order to lead an effective army. But in that army, who do you want as your soldiers? Who do you want as your general? Who do you want as your lieutenant? All of these things make sense as far as putting it into like a pyramid. But the reality of it is that in order to even have these people in your bubble or in your sphere or in your network, they really have to hit these three main things. Only genuinely good people, or people who genuinely care, are going to talk to you. They're not going to talk at you like an Italian mother during Christmas time, asking when you're going to have kids. Only people who genuinely care are going to talk to you, are going to help you anyway. You know those people in your network. They're going to drop everything to help you in some capacity, but the ask has to be intentional. So with networking, you don't just want to say, well, I can work with anybody that does blah. Don't do that. Be intentional about the people that you want to collaborate with, that you want to network with. Network and collaboration are two things that are very, very similar to each other, and people that you actually want to connect and sell to. You have to have an intentional ask in order for you to have an effective network. Otherwise, you're just networking with every Joe, Dick, and Harry and hoping for the best. Only people who genuinely care are going to ask you for realistic favors. They're not going to call you and say, hey, can you drop $10,000 on this new business idea? No, nobody wants that. The point I'm trying to make here is that in order for you to build an effective network, they have to hit on these three main areas. People who ask you for realistic favors are going to ask you, hey, would you mind sharing this status? Would you mind sharing this link? Would you mind sharing this article? Things that are simple and free to do. Okay. Now, what is the max? This is the interactive session, but I can't see anybody. So Tim, you're going to have to tell me what numbers come up on the screen here. But you guys know, what's the maximum number of people that you think that we can maintain relationships with and have social interactions with? Tim, do not cheat. What do we think? Put in the chat.
50.
What do you got?
That was a guess. 400.
That's a good guess.
35.
Whoever said 400, get off social media.
It's Doherty.
Doherty, you know this answer. Don't be rude.
We got 50.
Anybody else?
We got 35.
Frankly, I only like 7 people, but we're good. All right, cool. Those are good numbers, guys. Nice. Thank you for your participation today. The maximum number of people we can actually maintain relationships with and have social interactions with is 150 people. Now, this is coming from a theory by Robin Dunbar. This is he's a British anthropologist. So according to this theory, the tightest circle has just 5 people. These are loved ones. That's followed by a successive layer of 15 good friends. You've got 50 friends, 150 meaningful contacts, 500 acquaintances, and 1,500 people that you can recognize. So people will, it's important to recognize that people will migrate in and out of these layers, but the idea is that the space has to be carved out for anybody to come in that's new. So if you exceed 150, a network is unlikely to last long or cohere well. So as you're putting people into this army, you don't really want to exceed 150. You want to build it out you want to build it out in a way that's intentional and that actually is of use to you, just like you're of use to them. How are they giving you value? How are you giving them value? So story time is one of my favorite things. Okay, so everybody knows who Paul Revere is, right? Yes, I can understand from the silence that yes. You know, Paul Revere rode, from Boston, 1775. He raised a militia. He rode north. He sounded the alarm for the Revolutionary War. Okay, we all know that. Most people don't know who William Dawes is. So William Dawes rode from Boston, same night, sounded the alarm, rode south. The directions don't really matter. But the reason why history remembers Paul Revere is because Paul Revere was an information broker. So an information broker is a person who occupies a key role in a social network by connecting unrelated groups of people. So because he targeted well-connected people during his ride, his news then spread wildly and quickly. William Dawes, however, was not an information broker, and he didn't know what doors to knock when he entered that small town. So the moral of the story is, take this into concept with your businesses, with your skill sets, with your personality. If that information isn't delivered to the right people, you may just fall into obscurity like William Dawes. So with networking, I'm actually going to skip ahead just because there's a few other things I want you guys to go through. So everything on this page, and I'll give you some resources for you guys to look at afterwards too. But these are all your networking goals. Right? Networking is not just talking to people, it's engaging in a way that's intentional. So these are all great ideas. These are qualified as networking activity, which is building engagement on your LinkedIn profile, building new professional friendships, reaching out to past clients, to past networks, to past colleagues, to vendors you've worked with before, and checking in, and then nurturing your network by staying engaged with their content. LinkedIn is the #1 source to use. If you do not have a LinkedIn profile, shame on you. Get one today. I've got a few resources to help you with that as well. However, build a LinkedIn profile and start nurturing your network by doing these activities. So who the hell are you networking with? Right? So here are the top 3 groups that you should be networking with, according to me. So you've got something called strategic partners. Strategic partners can also be identified as power partners. These are people that will not only advocate for you not in the room, but also refer you when you're not in the room because there's no competition. So think of it as they're in complementary businesses. So think of a real estate agent and a divorce lawyer. Both of them are great strategic partners because if someone's getting divorced, they're typically downsizing or they're upgrading, depending on the agreement. So they'll be able to share both ways, a lead or a referral. The strategic partners are people that should be in your network that will be complementary to your field. I challenge you, or one of your assignments, just kidding, Tim, you don't have to give anybody an assignment, but I challenge you guys to find 5 industries that are complementary to your field. Those 5 industries are the people that you should be networking with because you can not only share leads, but there's no competition. And sometimes they can bring you on as a vendor, with their client. The next group of people are subject matter experts. These are people who have a niche in some kind of area that you suck at, right? So if you are awful at LinkedIn, find somebody on LinkedIn that's a LinkedIn expert and pick their brain for 15 minutes. Figure out who they know. Come to the table with some kind of resource or tool or introduction you could possibly offer of value to them. But these are people that are in very niche environments, and also there's no gatekeeper right now. So if you ever want to learn more about Instagram, if you ever want to learn more about marketing, have those 15-minute introduction conversations because the world will open up as far as a network is concerned. And then your current network. How the hell are you communicating with people that you already know and you like and you trust? Building a strong network is built off of people that you know, you like, and you trust. Otherwise, what you're building is just a group of random ass people that you're going to see at events that you might get drunk with once in a while and then completely forget what they do. So here's how to communicate well. I'm going to go through this and then a couple other things, and then we can open I'm 11 minutes in. Never mind. I'm just going to keep going. Cool. I talk real fast, Tim. Sorry about that. So how to communicate effectively. So one of the biggest compliments that I've ever received, or one of the most profound compliments, is that people leave conversations with me feeling energized. They don't feel like I've taken energy from them, but they are excited to either get started with networking or they're just excited about all the things that they can do because I guess I motivate them, which is great. But at the same time, they're leaving feeling that my goal has been to leave them feeling good about something. It could be about business, it could be about themselves, whatever it may be. You want to make your name memorable. I'm not saying put your face on everything like I do, but I'm saying that if you leave a conversation, what's the legacy, even if it's just one person that you want to leave? Not that you're the best at whatever, but that you have either made their day or left an impression. When you give yourself permission to engage in a way that's a bit vulnerable, it opens the door and it brings people's barriers down. Just like you would want if you met some rando at a bar trying to have a conversation with you. We don't have bars now because everything's closed down, but you know what I'm talking about. You know those interactions that you have with a customer service representative that's just joyful and wonderful, and it makes your day. Do the same thing for other people. Every single person that you meet, because you have no idea how you can change their life, perception, realization, perspective on anything. And that's important. And that's the value of networking. The next is end the conversation with the future in mind. If you leave anything up to the other person to follow up with, you have failed. I'm going to repeat that. If you leave anything up to the other person that you're talking to follow up, you have failed. It is your job to follow up with that person. Do not leave it in their hands. Do not remind them of it. You're the one that should be taking notes. You're the one that should be following up. You're going to be sorely disappointed about lack of follow-up from everybody else. So put into practice right now, you following up. What is the call to action from that conversation? Plan structured next step conversations. The way that I like to do it is if I have an introduction conversation with somebody new, 15 to 20 minutes on a call, and I feel like it could be really beneficial to talk to them every month. Do not wait to just send the email and say thank you. Put it on the calendar. Y'all have phones. Open up your calendar. What available time do you have on Friday? What available time do you have on Monday? And plan the structured next step conversations about what you talked about previously and put it on the calendar. These are intentional conversations you're having. Nothing should be willy-nilly in networking. Shouldn't. Nope. And it can be. I mean, I've got plenty of willy-nilly friends. I do, especially in business. But I'm always thinking of them when an opportunity arises because they built that know, that like, and that trust factor with me. Okay? I just happen to like more people than I should. So the next is recognize storytelling opportunities. You want to deliver stories in a way that increases personal and organizational visibility. How many times are you in a networking group, you're talking to somebody new, and they're vomiting what they do at you, right? Nobody cares, okay? Let me just make this very clear. Nobody cares about what you do. Get off your high horse. Your idea isn't the best. Nobody gives a damn because everybody's doing something. So in order for you to stick in their minds as somebody that you want to follow up with or they want to follow up with you, tell them how you fixed a problem. Not what you do, because I don't give a damn. Tell them how you fixed a problem. Come up with a case study or a story to emit some kind of emotion. That will allow them to not only trigger a good introduction because now they can figure out who they can connect you to, but it will also give them something to remember you by. Figure out, take your pitch, forget your 30 seconds, put a 30-second story together rather than just what the hell did you do. Build a diverse network.
Okay, hey, Ash, I was going to say, you touched on something there that I had written down. Give us something specific for entrepreneurs to do when they network. And I felt like you kind of just touched on a really, really important point there, which was don't vomit your idea on everybody. And I feel like that's extremely poignant for entrepreneurs because they feel like they need to go in and just say, here's how I'm going to save the world. Listen to me. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's just a great point. I wanted to just jump in. And if you have anything else you can expand on that from an entrepreneur standpoint, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. So just like Tim was saying, people will typically just vomit out their ideas. Guess what? So did I. The first 6 months, all I did was just word vomit how good I was because I was vulnerable to the idea that I didn't want to fail. I understand you doing that. And believe me, I'm trying to save you from 6 months of crap. However, it taught me a lot. So I'm not even sure I even wanted to give you advice on this because it's good to get proverbially punched in the face because you learn faster. So I'll give you advice because this is good. But the advice in that is, let me tell you, when people get into a professional level, even outside of their businesses, right? When they work for another company and they have to network and they come into a group and they just regurgitate all of their stuff, their title, their certifications, how this is the best idea ever or the best company ever, all the services. Every 99.9% of the people on that call have already dismissed that person, already have dismissed them. It is a bad practice to do that professionally. And people not only will dismiss you, but you'll be forgettable. And the whole point about networking is not only being recognizable, not physically, but just, your brand and your whole position on your business, but to also be the person that people feel comfortable going to, that they're not going to be sold to, that they're not going to have a one-sided conversation. Those people, let me tell you, during this pandemic, didn't hear a peep from them. Everybody that's in networking groups right now who are thriving in their environment are givers, people who advocate for somebody else, who provide value because they realized, as we all did, that community was very important. So to really kind of drive this home, tell a story, and then also be mindful enough to be genuinely curious and interested in somebody else. So kind of going back to that, because again, regurgitating all these things, sometimes it's easier said than done. So here are some great, I call them deep, meaningful business conversation questions. These are questions to ask to start getting comfortable pivoting the conversation onto somebody else. So my favorite questions to ask in this capacity is, when someone picks up the phone to call you, what problem are they having? This is a great question because, one, you're allowing them or giving them a way to tell a story about what it is that they fix. So now you're able to help them, guide them into the right conversation, but also be able to make the introduction based off of all of the people that you've already networked with. So you're helping the other person now explain what they do in a different capacity. The next is, what are you struggling with the most right now? This is a good one on two areas. One is, maybe you might be able to help them. Maybe your business actually services their biggest challenge right now. Or maybe it services a networking or a strategic partner of yours. Now you're building networking equity with the strategic partner by making that introduction, and maybe that turned into a lead for them. So asking those two questions allow you to be not only in control of the conversation, but gives you kind of a step above about how you might be able to help them and cater or cater the conversation around their actual needs. So be naturally curious, stop word vomiting what the hell it is you do, because nobody gives a damn. And there'll be more, it's like dating, guys. It's like, just keep asking them about what they do. Because at the end of the day, one, they're going to feel great because you were genuinely interested. And two, you've gotten so much more information on them that you can actually guide and figure out if they're a good connection for you or somebody else in your network. So to go off what Tim was saying, don't just regurgitate what the hell that you do. Tell a story and be genuinely curious in somebody else. Did I expand on that enough, Tim?
Yeah, no, that was great. Please continue.
Cool. All right. Please continue. Oh, thank you. I'm going to go about 5 more minutes because then we're going to hit the half an hour button there. Okay, cool. So these are the DMBCs. I'll send all this stuff to you, Tim, so you can give this to your class or give this to the group, excuse me. But here are some pro tips I kind of want to get involved in with you guys. Is there's something called the $80 method. So to increase engagement and awareness of your business, of who you are and what you do, you have to network in a way with intention. So this is a phrase coined by Gary V or Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about the $80 method on social media platforms. It still makes sense to do it on LinkedIn, and I've got videos and articles to show that to actually describe this even further. But this $80 method is brilliant. What you do is, on LinkedIn, you follow the top 10 hashtags that are relevant to your industry. Women in business, entrepreneur, startup, all these things. And then you look at the top trending or the most viewed posts as you click on it and start commenting thoughtfully or putting your 2 cents on these threads. The reason is because now people that are going to be attracted to that post are people with the same mindset and the same interest in what you're discussing. So now when you connect with those people, it's with intention and it's already warmer than it would be if it was just some rando on LinkedIn. So doing this 100 times a day increases engagement. For my professionals out there, I'd suggest doing this between 20 and 30 times a day. But for my newbies, 100 times a day will increase the connections you get on LinkedIn. You look to see if they're in those top 5 industries and then open the door for a 15-minute conversation. The reason why that's important, because you'll just watch as your network grows, because now you're focusing all of the traffic on intentional content that's relevant to your industry, and then you're in control of that communication by opening the door for a 15-minute conversation. This $80 method it works. It's why I've got 6 to 8 calls on my calendar a day with new people, and it's a lot. But if you're having those conversations, you're also asking these kinds of questions. But again, if you're asking these questions, you sure as hell better be able to answer them too. Next, tools and resources. Obviously, these are my favorite things. I should have contact on here. I thought I updated them. I'm so sorry. But these are some tools and resources. We're gonna go back into that later because I don't have contact on there. So it's an old one. So these are all the great tools to use. The one that I really wanted to focus on specifically was a tool called Calendly. Calendly is a great tool, especially if you're networking a lot, and it connects to your calendar and shows available times. The reason why Calendly is the #1 tool that I use is because when you create a networking phone call, you can create a link that has ways for people to put time into your calendar, but also answer questions. The reason why this is important is because if you network a lot, you want to figure out where your leads or your connections are coming from. And so you pull that data at the very end. So what happens is they click on a link, first name, last name, phone number, and then email address. And then you always ask, how did we connect? So now you know if the networking group that you're a part of is actually generating good connections, if your LinkedIn strategy is working. Are you putting so much time into your newsletter that doesn't really generate any kind of introductions? Using these tools allow you to keep track, but also shows who you need to be nurturing even further. So let's say Tim gives me 3 introductions over the course of a quarter. That's over the course of 4 months. And he's given me 3, and my trash brain forgets. I can go and pull that data every quarter, which I'm doing right now, and thank them personally, have another one-on-one and say, I owe you a bunch of introductions. Tell me about what's going on. Use the data to help you build a strong group of champions that become your army. Okay, so remember I talked about Calendly, right? So here's the analytics that I grabbed from my 2018 calls. I don't remember how many people this was, how many calls I got, but I think it was like 300 something. This all directly, the main topic or the main category came from direct referral. So people that have connected with me, people have connected other people with me via email, saying that, oh, I got your name from this person, or they made the introduction. The only reason why that number is so heavy is because all I did from the beginning of my business is from August to December of 2017, I went to every single networking event, and all I did was give introductions. How can I help you? With, and I kept track of all of that just so I can provide value in some way. I haven't had to network the stereotypical way in a very long time, because every person that I meet, because my network is so strong and because I built up the know, the like, and the trust factor, off the top of my head, I have to give 35 new introductions over the course of 3 days, because I know who my network is, what makes them strong, and that equity gets built up so much over the next few months that people just keep filing into my calendar and they become clients. So building up this networking equity and keeping track of all that is really important. And it also makes you work smarter, not harder. So it shows you how to keep track of all that stuff. LinkedIn templates, again, you get a Calendly link. When they connect with you after the $1.80 method, you put this into the message and ask them to schedule a call with you. If you're new to the networking scene, don't create a calendar link because you're not necessarily doing enough yet, but utilize this template as a way to communicate effectively. So what you're doing is, the first is, thank you so much for reaching out to connect. Since we're now connected, I love to learn more about you. So you're putting the information onto them, or putting the attention onto them. And hopefully I can provide an introduction or two, giving value. Let's set up a time to see how we can chat and see how we can help each other, what the intention is. This is 100% on a sales call, which again is very important to let them know. I use this link, or do you have time on Thursday between 3 and 5? Looking forward to learning more about you. When you connect with somebody, they're opting in to talk to you. Open the door. If they do not jump on a phone call with you, take them off your list. That way, everybody on your networking, everybody that you're connected with, you know personally, or at least you've had a conversation with.
Yes.
So at the end of that,
Nicole jumped in. Go back.
Hi, Nicole.
Go back to that slide for a sec, because Nicole had asked, when you reach out to people on LinkedIn, what should you say to make them have that 15-minute call with us? So kind of exactly what you said on that LinkedIn template. When you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, how do you get them on that 15-minute call with you? And that's a great way to do that. So
Nicole, I'm going to copy and paste it and put it in the chat right now. You guys are going to get this later, but just so you have it. There you go. Ah, that looks awful. Yeah. Yes, I will send that over.
Yeah. If you would send your PowerPoint, if that's possible to do, I'm going to email it out to everybody.
I'll send over a hidden page with all of this stuff on there, including additional resources. And I went through this pretty fast. So there's all these other presentations on there with even deeper dive into certain things. You guys are going to get all of that. So it'll be a hidden page on my website that you guys will have access to. So that's all yours. I'll give that to you, Tim, after this.
So she just followed up and said, so that's for when someone connects with you. But what kind of things do you ask when you're, I guess, cold emailing out through or cold sending out messages in LinkedIn?
So the only thing that you really want to change is the first and second. Let me see if I can share my screen again. 1 second. So it's the first and second. There we go. Is the first and second message here. So think about, can you see that? There we go. Yep. So thanks for reaching out to connect. It truly help you and your family are safe during this pandemic. What you can say is, thank you for connecting. Or it's more of, why do you want to connect with them? Is networking? I saw your profile. I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I think Ashley's breaking up a little bit, but I would, I'm no professional in this realm, but I would say it would be more like, something in your profile intrigued me, that kind of thing where you felt intrigued to reach out and then kind of take over from there with her template. Yeah. So I'm sure Ashley's going to jump back in. But does anybody have any other questions or comments for Ashley for when she gets back in? Let's see, Michael, my man, Wakatama. I like to be direct, but also leave a nugget so that we can have something to talk about. That's also a very good suggestion. You want to say why you're there, why you're trying to connect, but also leave the door open for some conversation later. So, Ashley, I don't know if you can hear us. I don't think Ashley's on. Let's see if she'll jump back in. Ashley said, best way would be to tell them why you're interested in chatting with them. I saw you do X on your profile, and I'm so interested in learning more. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So we only have a couple minutes left. Best way would be to tell them who you are and why you're interested with them. Can she go into the 100 comments on content? Yeah, the 180 rule, and following companies, and the recommended long-term approach. Look at Ashley, she's typing away. Yeah, so like I said, I think I'm going to come out and come back in again. All right, let's wait for Ashley to get back in. But either way, I feel like Ashley has really provided some good insight, some good conversation. When we had our conversation, Dominic and Diana and Josh and I had our talk about who we should bring into these events and stuff like that. Ashley was tops on the list. I know she brings a lot of energy, a lot of humor, and there she is. She's back.
Sorry, guys. So 100 comments on content. Yeah, that's called the $1.80 method. I'm going to drop it. Gary Vee can describe it way more than I can, better. So I'm going to drop in to the chat. So if you just give me a second, I'll find it, and that will definitely help you and describe more of what to put into those comments. I mean, I would just be doing it incorrectly if I didn't just give you the actual source. Try that, love. You're welcome. So whoever my virtual learners are, or the visual learners are, there's a video and there's an article as well in that. So let me separate them out because that looks a little jointed. Here is the article, and then here is the video. There you go.
That's awesome.
Sure.
So anything else for Ashley? Ashley, like I said, I want to
Sorry,
thank
guys.
you again. It was great having you. You know, appreciate your stories, your content, and like you said, anything you can share. You know, there weren't a ton of people on the call, but our reach is much greater than who showed up. So I'd love to send out an email with any links or comments or anything that you have to the rest of our members. And you know, we'll keep cutting this up and sending it out and let the internet do its thing.
You're so welcome. Of course, I'll put everything in an email, and anybody on this call, if you guys, it's all there. I'll that way you can forward over to all the attendees. You guys have been wonderful. I think just to kind of leave you with some advice at the very end. When you're building everybody's winging it. Don't be hard on yourself. Everybody's winging it. People who are serial entrepreneurs, they are winging it. So have faith in yourself that you know how to troubleshoot. If you're going into a business that's your own, you're an entrepreneur, you're a little screwy in the head. That's good. You need to have a little bit of spice attached to it. But everyone is winging it. So don't not do something because you're afraid that you're going to fail. There are so many ways that you won't. Yourself to know how to troubleshoot. That's a skill set that if you can manage, you're going to do just fine. Again, I had no business starting a business. My motivating factor was to shut people up. So whatever your motivating factor is, recognize it and then realize that you'll be able to figure it out. So hopefully it helps.
Cool. So the Startup Grind for Startup Grind Atlantic City, we haven't officially locked down our next event, but we're looking into, you know, we keep doing the third week of the month, February. What is that? February what? The 18th is our penciled in date. We're still trying to lock down our speaker for that month, but it will be some interesting content nonetheless. So again, special thank you to Ashley Owens at Ashley Assist, your networking concierge, and former actress. So anyway,
Oh, God, don't ever bring that up.
Thank you so much. And
Dominic, I got a message from Dominic's daughter. Honey, I am trying real hard. I'm trying real hard to be famous. I am not, but I'm trying. There's too much personality in my little brain.
She's famous in my book.
I'd be happy to hang out with your daughter. If she plays softball, we're good. I can't wait.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.